The emergency message traveled across space for 3 weeks before it reached Earth. Ambassador Zethka's voice carried the weight of his dying species as he spoke into the recording device one last time. This is the Calri Confederation calling. For help from any who will listen. We are a peaceful people. We have always been peaceful. But the Vorthok Empire has come to our worlds and they bring only death. Zethka paused, his long fingers trembling as he adjusted the transmitter. Through the window of his ship, he could see his homeworld burning. The one-screen cities now glowed orange with fire. The Vorthok had landed 3 days ago. We offer technology, trade agreements, anything of value to those who can help us. Our military cannot stop them. We have tried negotiation. We have offered them resources, even empty worlds to colonize. They refuse everything. They only want to kill us all. The ambassador looked at the small device that would carry his words to the stars. It was their last hope. Every other species they had contacted either ignored them or said the Vorthok were too dangerous to fight. Please, someone help us. We are running out of time. The message reached Earth's orbital communication station on a Tuesday morning. Lieutenant Mike Turner was drinking coffee when the alien transmission came through his headset. He had been monitoring space communications for 2 years and had never heard anything like it. Captain Morrison, you need to hear this. Turner called across the bridge of the UES Victory, Captain Jake. Morrison set down his reports and walked over to Turner's station. Morrison was young for a ship captain, only 35, but he had earned his rank during the colony wars. His brown hair was already showing gray at the temples from the stress of command.
Oh, what do you have, Turner? Where's
Sounds like someone's in serious trouble. Morrison put on the headset and listened to the message. His face grew serious as Zethka's desperate words filled his ears. When the message ended, Morrison was quiet for a long moment. How far away? Morrison asked. 3 weeks at maximum speed, sir. The signal is coming from the Kepler sector. Morrison nodded. Send this to Admiral Carter immediately. Mark it urgent. The message reached Earth's military headquarters 6 hours. Later, Admiral Lisa Carter read the full translation twice before calling her staff meeting. The conference room filled with officers, scientists, and politicians within an hour. Ladies and gentlemen, we have received what appears to be a genuine request for military assistance from an alien species, Carter announced. She was a tall woman with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing, Dr. Amy Wells. The Navy's top expert on alien cultures leaned forward. Admiral, we've studied the transmission carefully. The Calari appeared to be herbivores based on their vocal patterns and language structure. Everything about their message suggests they are truly peaceful. And the Vorthok? Carter asked. Predators. Dr. Wells replied grimly. Their name translates roughly to those who consume. The few references we found in our databases suggest they are an aggressive, expansionist species. General Frank Cole, head of military operations, spoke up. Admiral, we're talking about getting involved in an alien war. We have no idea what we're walking into. Carter nodded. I understand the risks, General. But this could be our chance to establish relations with a galactic civilization. The Calari are clearly advanced if they can send faster-than-light messages. Do we know about their technology? Asked Commander Pete Davis, the fleet's tactical officer. Dr. Wells consulted her notes. Their ships appear to be more advanced than ours in many ways. Better power systems, more efficient engines. but their weapons technology seems limited. They're not fighters, Carter concluded. That's why they need help. The debate continued for 3 hours. Some argued that humanity should stay out of alien conflicts. Others pointed out that Earth needed allies if they wanted to expand into space. In the end, Carter made the decision that would change humanity's future. "We're going to help them," she announced. "Captain Morrison, prepare your ship and a small fleet. This is a rescue mission, not a conquest." 2 days later, the UES Victory led a small battle group out of Earth's solar system. Alongside Morrison's ship were the destroyers Portland and Miami, plus the supply ship Denver. The entire force carried only 3,000 personnel, but they represented the best of Earth's military. Dr. Wells joined the mission as cultural liaison. She spent the 3-week journey studying everything they knew about the Kolarian Vorthok. Lieutenant Commander Davis used the time to analyze what little combat data they had about Vorthok forces. "Their tactics seemed straightforward," Davis reported to Morrison as they neared Kolari space. "Overwhelming numbers, direct assault, no mercy for civilians. They're not subtle." "And the Kolari response?" Morrison asked. "Evacuation mostly. They try to save as many people as possible and abandon their positions. It's a losing strategy against an enemy that wants to kill everyone." Morrison studied the tactical displays showing Kolari space. Red markers indicated Vortha-controlled systems. The red was spreading. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," Turner announced from his station. The voice that came through was different from the original message. This speaker sounded older, more tired. "Unknown vessels. This is Elder Vosna of the Kolari Defense Council. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." Morrison picked up the communications device. "Elder Vosna, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Victory. We received your people's call for help. We're here to assist you." The silence that followed lasted almost a minute. When Vosna spoke again, his voice was filled with disbelief. "You... came. Someone actually came." "Yes, sir. We're here to help however we can." Another pause. "Captain Morrison, I must warn. You, the Vorthok, are very dangerous. Many species have tried to stop them. All have failed." Morrison looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for his response. These were men and women who had fought in Earth's bloodiest conflicts. They had seen war up close and personal. "Elder Vosna, with respect, you haven't met humans before. At dealing with dangerous things, the human fleet entered Kolari space to find a civilization on the edge of collapse. Refugee ships filled the space lanes, fleeing from burning worlds. The few remaining Kolari military vessels looked damaged and worn from constant retreat. Morrison ordered his ships to the Kolari capital world, where they were met by Elder Vosna himself. The alien leader was tall and thin, with pale green skin and large eyes that seemed to hold deep sadness. "Captain Morrison, I cannot express how grateful we are that someone finally answered our call," Vosna said, as they met in the human shuttle bay. Morrison shook the alien's delicate hand carefully. "We're here to help, Elder, but we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." As Vosna began to explain the Vorthok threat, Morrison realized this was unlike any mission he had ever undertaken. The humans had come expecting a border, conflict, or resource dispute. Instead, they had walked into a genocide. The war was about to change in ways neither species could imagine. Elder Vosna led Captain Morrison through the Kolari command center, his long legs moving quickly despite his obvious exhaustion. The alien's pale green skin looked even paler under the emergency lighting that had replaced the normal soft glow. "This is our situation room," Vosna explained, gesturing to the large displays showing red markers across a star map. "Each red symbol represents a world we have lost to the Vorthok." Morrison studied the tactical display with the eye of a career military officer. The pattern was clear and disturbing. The Vorthok weren't just conquering territory. They were systematically destroying everything in their path. "Civilians have you evacuated?" Morrison asked. "Nearly 2 billion from the outer colonies," Vosna replied. "But we cannot save them all. The Vorthok move too fast." Dr. Amy Wells stepped forward, her tablet recording everything. Elder Vosna, can you tell us more about Vorthok tactics? How do they fight? Vosna's large eyes grew even sadder. They do not fight, Dr. Wells. They slaughter. There is no honor in their warfare, no mercy for the weak. They kill everything that lives. Lieutenant Commander Pete Davis had been quiet, but now he spoke up. Elder, do you have any recordings of Vorthok attacks? Battle footage, survivor reports, anything that shows how they operate. Yes, but I warn you, the images are difficult to watch, Vosna said. He activated a holographic display that showed a colliery city from above. The humans watched in silence as Vorthok ships descended on the peaceful settlement. The aliens were insect-like, with hard shells and multiple arms. They moved through the city like a swarm, destroying everything they encountered. What disturbed Morrison most was the complete lack of military strategy. This wasn't warfare, it was extermination. How many Vorthok are in each attack force? Davis asked, making notes. On his tablet, usually between 10 and 20,000 ground troops, supported by 50 to 100 ships, Vosna answered. Davis looked surprised. That's not very many for conquering an entire planet. It is enough when the enemy cannot fight back effectively, Vosna said sadly. We are not warriors, Commander Davis. We have never needed to be. Morrison continued studying the battle recordings. Something about the Vorthok movements caught his attention. They bunch up a lot, he observed. Tight formations, no spacing between units. Is that significant? Vosna asked. Maybe, Morrison said. Dr. Wells, what can you tell us about Vorthok biology from these images? Dr. Wells had been analyzing the footage carefully. They appear to be hive-minded to some degree. Notice how they move in groups, never alone. Their coordination is excellent, but they don't seem to adapt well to unexpected situations. Interesting, Davis muttered, making more notes. Vosna looked between the humans nervously. Captain Morrison, I hope you understand what you are facing. The Vorthok have conquered 18 different species in the past century. They have never been defeated. Morrison turned to face the Kalari elder. With respect, sir, they've never fought humans before. The statement seemed to disturb Vosna more than comfort him. Over the next few days, as the humans learned more about their new allies, the Kalari began to understand why Dr. Wells conducted cultural exchange sessions with Kalari scientists and diplomats. The conversations revealed fundamental differences between the species that went far beyond physical appearance. Your species has been at peace for how long? Dr. Wells asked during one session. Nearly 3,000 years, replied Kalari scientist. Nethra. We eliminated warfare when we achieved space travel. Violence became unnecessary once we had unlimited resources. But you still maintain military forces, Dr. Wells pointed out. Only for defense against natural disasters and accidents, Nethra explained. We never imagined we would need to fight other intelligent beings. Meanwhile, Davis was reviewing Kolari military equipment with their defense coordinators. The results were not encouraging. Your weapons are designed to disable, not destroy, Davis observed, as he examined a Kalari infantry rifle. Of course, replied Commander Kestu. Why would we want to cause permanent harm? Davis looked at the weapon's specifications. It was designed to stun targets temporarily, allowing them to be captured safely. Against an enemy that wanted to kill everything it encountered, such weapons were worse than useless. Commander Kestu, have you ever considered that some enemies might not be interested in being captured alive? Davis asked. The question seemed to confuse the Kolari officer. But what would be the point of fighting if not to resolve differences peacefully? The cultural gap became even more apparent when Morrison requested to examine Vorthok prisoners and captured equipment. The request horrified several Kalari leaders. Captain Morrison, we do not torture prisoners, Elder Vosna said firmly. Even Vorthok prisoners receive proper medical care and comfortable quarters. I'm not talking about torture, Morrison replied. I need to understand how their equipment works, how they think, what their weaknesses might be. But they are prisoners, protested Counselor Yethka. They are helpless. Morrison realized the Kalari didn't understand the concept of military intelligence gathering. To them, prisoners were simply unfortunate beings who needed care until they could be returned home. The first joint operation was planned as a simple evacuation mission. A Kalari colony world called Havoc 3 was in the path of an approaching Vorthok fleet. The plan was straightforward: help the remaining civilians. Escape before the enemy arrived. The transport ships will need 6 hours to evacuate everyone, Vosna explained as they reviewed the mission plan. Simply need to buy them time. How do you usually buy time? Morrison asked. We position our ships between the transports, and the enemy then retreats slowly while the civilians escape, Vosna replied. Davis frowned at the tactical display. What if we stayed and fought instead? The suggestion shocked the Kalari commanders present. Fight, Commander Davis. The Vorthok fleet has 40 ships. We have only 12, and now you're 4 vessels. 16 ships can do a lot of damage, if used correctly, Davis said. Morrison studied the colony's location and the approaching Vorthok formation. What if we let them land first? Captain, I do not understand, Vosna said. The Vorthok are expecting another easy victory. They're probably not prepared for serious resistance. If we hide our ships and let them commit to landing, we can hit them when they're most vulnerable. Elder Vosna looked deeply uncomfortable. But Captain, that would mean allowing them to attack the colony. There are still civilians there. If we evacuate everyone first and make it look like a normal retreat, Morrison explained, then when they land expecting to find helpless victims, they find us instead. The plan violated everything the Kalari understood about proper warfare. Fighting was supposed to be defensive, protective, never aggressive. But they were desperate enough to try anything. Dr. Wells spent the journey to Havoc 3 trying to prepare the Kalari for what they were about to witness. Humans fight differently than you do, she explained to Vosna. We've had to learn to be very efficient at warfare. How efficient? Vosna asked. Dr. Wells thought about Earth's history. Of conflict, the countless wars that had shaped human civilization. Very efficient, she said finally. When the Vorthok fleet arrived at Havoc 3, they found exactly what they expected: an abandoned colony world with no defenses. Their ships landed confidently, disgorging thousands of troops to begin there. Usual systematic destruction. What they found instead was hell waiting. For them, with human faces, the battle lasted only 2 hours, but it changed everything. The Kalari watched in stunned silence as human tactics turned the Vorthok's superior numbers into a liability. Morrison's ships didn't just fight the enemy. They hunted them. When it was over, 37 of the 40 Vorthok ships were destroyed or captured. The 3 that escaped carried word of something new in the galaxy, an enemy that fought back with equal brutality. Elder Vosna stood on the bridge of the Victory, staring at the tactical display showing the battle's aftermath. Around him, human crew members discussed the fight like it had been a training exercise. Good shooting on those landing craft, Turner Morrison said to his communications officer. Thanks, Captain. Did you see Lieutenant Hayes nail that command ship? Beautiful shot. Casual way they discussed the destruction disturbed Vosna deeply. These humans had just killed thousands of beings, and they seemed almost cheerful about it. Captain Morrison, Vosna said quietly. What kind of people are you? Morrison looked at the Kalari elder for a long moment before answering. The kind that wins wars, Elder. The kind you need if you want to survive this. For the first time since the crisis began, Vosna wondered if survival was worth the price they might have to pay for it. News of the human victory at Havoc 3 spread through both Kalari and Vorthok communication networks like wildfire. For the first time in their history of conquest, the Vorthok Empire had suffered a major defeat. The implications terrified both sides for different reasons. Admiral Lisa Carter arrived from Earth 3 weeks later with reinforcements. Her fleet included the heavy cruiser Washington, 2 more destroyers, and something that made Elder Vosna deeply uncomfortable. Full battalion of human Marines under Colonel Ben Parker. Captain Morrison, report, Carter said as she stepped aboard the Victory. Morrison led the Admiral to his ready room, where Vosna and Dr. Wells waited. Admiral, the situation is more complex than we initially thought. And the Vorthok aren't just conquering territory or attempting to wipe out the Kalari completely. Carter studied the star charts showing Vorthok advances. Complete genocide? Yes, ma'am. They've destroyed entire planets rather than occupy them. This isn't about resources or territory. It's about elimination. Dr. Wells added her analysis. Admiral, I've been studying captured Vorthok prisoners. Their psychology is fundamentally different from anything we've encountered. They view other intelligent species as competitors that must be destroyed, not potential allies or subjects. Vasna spoke quietly. They have told us directly that they will not stop until every Kolari is dead. Carter nodded grimly. Then we need to stop them permanently. Colonel Parker, what's your assessment of Vorthok ground forces? Colonel Parker was a lean man with graying hair and scars on his hands from years of combat. They're tough fighters, Admiral, but they rely too much on intimidation. They're used to enemies that run away. When someone fights back, they don't adapt well.
Air.
Tactics? Carter asked. Overwhelming force, no subtlety. They just charge forward and expect superior numbers to win. It works against civilians, but it's suicide against prepared positions. Wasna listened to the humans discuss warfare with growing unease. They spoke about killing with the same calm professionalism that Kolari scientists use to discuss plant biology. Admiral Carter Vasna interrupted. Perhaps we should focus on negotiation. Surely there must be some way to reach a peaceful solution. The humans exchanged glances. Carter turned to face the Kolari elder directly. Elder Vasna, have the Vorthok ever agreed to negotiate? Well, no, but perhaps if we offered them something they truly wanted. They want you dead, Colonel Parker said bluntly. All of you, that's not something you can negotiate around. Dr. Wells tried to soften the colonel's words. Elder, I've studied the psychological profiles of our Vorthok prisoners. They don't think like Kolari or humans. To them, the existence of other intelligent species is an insult that must be corrected. The conversation was interrupted by Lieutenant Turner's voice over the communications system. Captain Morrison to the bridge immediately. We have incoming Vorthok signals. The group rushed to the bridge where Turner was monitoring multiple communication channels, sir. We're picking up Vorthok fleet movements throughout this sector. It looks like they're massing for a major offensive. Morrison studied the tactical display. Red markers showed Vorthok ships converging from multiple directions. How many ships? Initial count shows at least 300 vessels, Captain. There. All heading toward the Kolari home system. Wasna's skin went pale. 300 ships? That's their entire battle fleet. Carter examined the enemy formation. They're not taking any chances this time. They want to end this war quickly. Admiral, we have maybe 50 ships total if we count every Kolari vessel, Morrison pointed out. The odds are 6-1 against us, and we don't fight them ship to ship, Carter decided. Colonel Parker, how long would it take to evacuate the Kolari homeworld? With all available transports? Maybe 2 weeks. If we work around the clock, Parker replied. Vasna stepped forward desperately. Admiral, you cannot mean to abandon our homeworld. It has been our home for thousands of years. Carter looked at the star charts again. Elder, sometimes the only way to save something is to let it go temporarily. You can't protect your planet. Against those numbers, but we can make the Vorthok pay dearly for taking it. What do you mean? Vasna asked, though he was afraid of the answer. Morrison explained the plan that was forming. We evacuate everyone we can, but we don't make it. Obvious. We leave behind volunteers who know the planet's systems. When the Vorthok land, they think they're conquering a populated world. Instead, they find carefully prepared surprises. Dr. Wells realized what Morrison was suggesting. You want to turn the entire planet into a trap? The biggest trap in galactic history, Carter confirmed. The Vorthok want a quick, decisive victory. We're going to give them a victory that costs so much they'll think twice about continuing this war. The plan horrified Vasna. You're talking about destroying our homeworld. You're talking about saving your species, Colonel Parker said firmly. A planet can be rebuilt. Extinct civilizations can't be brought back to life. Over the next 10 days, the largest evacuation in Kolari history took place. Human transport ships worked alongside Kolari vessels to move millions of civilians to safe worlds. But some Kalari chose to stay behind, volunteers who knew they might not survive, but wanted to help defend their homeworld one last time. The humans used those 10 days to prepare the planet's surface. Colonel Parker's Marines worked with Kalari, engineers to modify cities, industrial centers, and transportation networks. Every major settlement became a carefully designed battlefield where Vorthok, numerical superiority, would become a disadvantage. Dr. Wells spent her time interviewing the Kalari volunteers who chose to stay. "Why are you doing this?" she asked Nethra, the scientist she had spoken with weeks earlier. "Because you humans have shown us something we never understood before," Nethra replied. "Sometimes peace can only be preserved through war. Sometimes the only way to protect life is to be willing to take it." "But you're not warriors," Dr. Wells pointed out. Nethra smiled sadly. "No, Dr. Wells, we are not warriors, but we are learning to be." When the Vorthok fleet arrived, they found exactly what they expected: a Kalari homeworld with minimal defenses and no significant military presence. The human ships were nowhere to be seen, apparently having fled when faced with overwhelming odds. War Commander Krexvoth led the invasion force personally. He'd conquered 12 worlds and expected this to be no different. His troops landed in massive formations, ready to begin the systematic extermination of the Kalari. Capital, what they found instead was a carefully orchestrated nightmare. The battle for the Kalari homeworld lasted 4 days. The Vorthok took the planet but lost 2/3 of their invasion fleet in the process. Worse, they discovered that every major victory came at a devastating cost. Human weapons and tactics, combined with Kalari knowledge of the terrain, turned the planet's cities into death traps. The Vorthok found themselves fighting an enemy that used their own aggression against them, to turn their superior numbers into a liability. On the 4th day, the surviving Vorthok ships retreated into orbit, having taken a planet that was no longer worth holding. The surface was largely destroyed, but so were most of the Vorthok ground forces. Admiral Carter watched the battle reports from her flagship in the outer system. "Casualty report, Colonel." Parker consulted his tablet. "We lost 60% of the volunteers, including Nethra and most of the Kalari engineers. Human casualties were much lighter, but still significant." Vosna sat quietly in the corner of the bridge. His homeworld was conquered, his people scattered across the galaxy, but somehow they had achieved something impossible. They had made the Vorthok bleed. "The psychological impact will be enormous," Dr. Wells reported. Troops are sharing stories about a planet that fought back. Some are refusing orders to participate in future invasions. Morrison studied the tactical displays showing the retreating Vorthok fleet. They're not invincible anymore. Every species in the galaxy will. "See that?" Carter nodded. "And every species will know that humans are willing to fight for those who can't fight for themselves." Vosna finally spoke. "Admiral Carter, I need to ask you something. Are you proud of what happened here?" Carter considered the question carefully. "Elder, I'm proud that we saved your species from extinction. I'm proud that your people showed more courage than anyone thought possible. Am I proud of the killing? No. But I'm proud that we were willing to do what was necessary." The Kalari. Elder looked out at the stars where his people now lived in exile. "We asked for aid and received something far more complex. You've taught us that sometimes survival requires becoming something you never wanted to be." "The important thing," Carter replied, "is that you survived to have that choice." The war was far from over, but something fundamental had changed. The Vorthok were no longer unstoppable, and the galaxy had learned that humans were a force that could not be ignored. More importantly, the Kalari had learned that they were stronger than they ever imagined possible. The price of that knowledge was higher than anyone wanted to pay. But for a species facing extinction, it was a price worth paying. 6 months after the battle for the Kalari homeworld, War Prime Krethvok sat in his command chamber, staring at casualty reports that made no sense to him. The Vorthok Empire had conquered 47 different species over 3 centuries. They had never lost more than 10% of their forces in any single campaign. The humans had cost them 60% of their main battle fleet in one engagement. "War Prime, the Council demands answers," his aide Vexka announced nervously. The other war commanders are questioning the wisdom of continuing this campaign. Krethvox's mandibles clicked together in frustration. The humans fight like no species we have ever encountered. They use our own strength against us. They make war into a science. Perhaps we should consider negotiation, Vexka suggested carefully. The suggestion would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. The Vorthok did not negotiate. They conquered or they died trying. But these humans had changed something fundamental. About the equation. Send a message to the human fleet, Krethvox decided. Tell them the Vorthok Empire wishes to discuss terms. The message reached Admiral Carter's flagship 2 days later. She read it 3 times before calling a staff meeting that would include both human officers and Kaleri representatives. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vorthok want to talk, Carter announced to the assembled group. Elder Vosna looked up from his reports on refugee resettlement. They want to negotiate? After all this time? Apparently losing half their fleet made them reconsider their position, Colonel Parker said with satisfaction. Dr. Wells was more cautious. Admiral, this could be a trap. Everything we know about Vorthok psychology suggests they don't back down from fights. Which is exactly why this is significant, Carter replied. However they're willing to negotiate, it means we've hurt them worse than they're admitting. Captain Morrison studied the message translation. Where do they want to meet? Neutral space. Station controlled by the Zephyrian Trade Council, Carter answered. Far enough from both our territories to be considered safe. The negotiations took place 3 weeks later on a massive space station that served traders from dozens of different species. The meeting drew attention from across the galaxy. Word had spread about the humans who had made the unstoppable Vorthok. Empire asked for peace talks. Admiral Carter led the human delegation, accompanied by Morrison, Dr. Wells, and Elder Vosna, representing the Kaleri. War Prime Krethvox came with a small group of Vorthok military commanders, all of whom looked deeply uncomfortable with the entire situation. The first session was held in a large conference room with translation devices for all parties. Krethvox spoke first, his insectoid features making his emotions difficult to read. Humans of Earth, the Vorthok Empire recognizes your competence in warfare. We propose a division of territory. You may keep the systems you have taken. We will continue our expansion in other directions. Carter's response surprised everyone in the room. War Prime, we're not interested in territory. And what do you want? Krethvox asked, clearly confused. We want you to stop killing civilians, Carter said simply. No more genocide, no more extermination campaigns. If you want to fight wars, fight soldiers, not helpless populations. The Vorthok delegation exchanged glances. Vexka spoke up. Admiral Carter, I do not think you understand. Conquest requires the elimination of resistance. If we allow conquered species to survive, they will eventually rebel. Dr. Wells leaned forward. War Prime, may I ask you a question? Why do you conquer other species? Because it is our nature, Krethvox replied. The strong consume the weak. It has always been so. But consuming doesn't require killing everything, Dr. Wells pointed out. Humans have conquered many territories throughout our history. We learned that ruling living subjects is more profitable than ruling empty worlds. Morrison added his perspective. War Prime, dead civilizations can't build anything, can't create. New technologies can't contribute to your empire. You're throwing away resources. The concept seemed alien to the Vorthok mindset. They had always viewed other species as obstacles to be removed, not assets to be managed. Elder Vosna spoke. For the first time during the negotiations, War Prime Krethvox, my people have technologies that could benefit your empire. It's medical advances, agricultural techniques, environmental systems. All of this knowledge dies when you kill the people who created it. Krethvox was quiet for a long moment. You suggest that conquest should preserve the conquered. We suggest that intelligent conquest is more valuable than total destruction, Carter replied. But more importantly, we insist that any species engaging in genocide will face human intervention? You threaten us? Krethvox asked, his mandibles clicking dangerously. "We inform you," Carter said calmly. "Humanity has decided to take an active role in preventing the extinction of intelligent species. Consider us the galaxy's insurance policy." Against genocide, the negotiations continued for 5 days. Vorthok struggled to understand human motivations. They could not comprehend why a species would fight to protect strangers with no hope of territorial or material gain. Dr. Wells spent hours explaining human psychology to the Vorthok delegation. Form attachments to other species, War Prime. We see intelligence as valuable regardless of which species possesses it. Destroying intelligence seems wasteful to us. But humans are warriors, Vexa pointed out. We have seen your capacity for violence. Why do you restrain yourselves? Because violence is a tool, not a goal, Morrison explained. We use it to achieve specific objectives. Random destruction serves no purpose. On the final day, Krethvox presented the Vorthok Empire's formal terms. They would agree to cease extinction campaigns against intelligent species. Military conflicts would be limited to soldiers and strategic targets. Civilian populations would be spared in exchange for surrender and tribute. In return, the humans would not interfere with Vorthok expansion into uninhabited systems or conflicts with species that chose to fight rather than surrender. Carter considered the terms carefully. War Prime, this agreement requires enforcement mechanisms. You propose to monitor Vorthok military operations? Krethvox asked. We propose to respond to violations, Carter replied. And he returned to genocide tactics. We'll bring human forces to stop you. The treaty was signed with great ceremony, witnessed by representatives from a dozen different species. The document established humanity as the galaxy's enforcer of military ethics, a role they had never sought but were uniquely qualified to fill. Elder Vasna watched the signing with mixed emotions. Admiral Carter, may I ask you something? Of course, Elder. Do you ever regret answering our call for help? Your people could have remained safely in your own system, unknown to the galaxy. Carter considered the question while watching Krethvox attach his seal to the treaty. Elder, my species has a saying, evil triumphs when good people do nothing. We couldn't do nothing. Even though it means humanity will now be involved in conflicts across the galaxy, especially because of that, Carter replied. Someone has to be willing to stand up to bullies, Elder. It might as well be us. The treaty signing was broadcast across the galaxy, and its implications were immediately understood by every spacefaring civilization. The Vorthok Empire, which had seemed unstoppable, had been forced to negotiate by a species most had never heard of. Captain Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Victory, watching ships from dozens of different species dock at the space station. Many were there to make contact with humanity, to establish diplomatic relations with the new galactic power. Dr. Wells joined him at the viewport. Second thoughts, Captain, about stopping a genocide? No, Morrison replied. But I wonder what kind of galaxy we're creating? Will we spend the next century policing every conflict between species? Maybe, Dr. Wells said. But maybe that's not such a bad thing. Someone needs to make sure wars stay between soldiers and don't become massacres of civilians. Morrison nodded, watching a Kalari refugee ship dock with the station. The Kalari wanted aid and got Deathworlders instead. With the trade, Elder Vasna's voice came from behind them. Morrison, may I answer that? They turned to see the Kalari Elder approaching with several other refugees. We asked for help saving our people, and you gave us something more valuable. You taught us that intelligence and compassion can be combined with strength and determination. You showed us that we don't have to choose between survival and our principles. Vasana looked out at the stars where his people were now building new homes on safer worlds. Yes, Captain Morrison, we are very satisfied with the trade, and the galaxy is a safer place because of it. The human fleet departed the space station a week later, but their presence in galactic affairs was now permanent. Earth had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or traitors, but as guardians of those who could not guard themselves. In the years that followed, the phrase they wanted aid, but got Deathworlders instead, became a common saying throughout the galaxy. It was spoken with gratitude by those who had been saved, with caution by those who started conflicts, and with pride by the humans who had chosen to make the universe a place where genocide was no longer an acceptable military strategy,